Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Inshallah, in our today's talk regarding the life of Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu an, we will continue where we left off last week. We started talking about the Khilafah of Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu an. As we mentioned before also, we started off from his life when he was born until the time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was appointed as the Prophet and he became Muslim. And then we talked about his life during the time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was calling the people towards Islam in the Mecca and then in Medina. And then we talk about Uthman's life during the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu's era and then Umar bin Khattab's era. And then we started off when Uthman bin Affan became the Khalifa after Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was martyred. And during that, we are going to, as we said, going to divide his life, his role as the head of the state, as a Khalifa. He played different roles. He was a Khalifa, and then the different things that he did during his era, we talk about that. So we started talking about his ruling last week, and we did talk about that when he became the Khalifa, what was his first speech, and then the letters he sent out to different people who had the power, whether it was the governors, wali, or the letters to the commanders of the troops, the people who were collecting the kharaj, and his letter to the masses. This is the beginning. And then we talked about during his era, like the time of Abu Bakr, Umar radiallahu anhuma, and before that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way they were running the affairs of the people was based on the Quran and the Sunnah. So the highest authority belonged to the Shara. And this is what they were ruling over the people. Now, during that time, after that, we, inshallah, we'll talk about that, as I mentioned last week as well, that it's not only the ruling was by Islam, part of Islam is also to hold the rulers accountable as well. So it's not like, even though Khalifa is the one who is the head of the state, he is the one who's responsible for everything in Islam, but he is also still accountable. There's accountability factor involved with the Khulafa. Whether it was Abu Bakr, whether it was Umar, and now we're talking about Uthman bin Affan, all those cases we see that they were accountable in front of, can be accountable by the people. And of course, they're accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anyways. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually talks about this issue when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amr minkum fa in tana'zatum fi shay'in فَرُدُّهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, O you who believe, obey Allah and His Messenger and the ones who have the authority among the Muslims, meaning Allah Azza wa Jal has placed these people as the authority over you. You obey them as well, the one who is ruling by Islam. But then the ayah says, and if you differ in anything, meaning you are obeying the ruler over you, if you disobey, if you find him that he is not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, then what are you supposed to do? As it says, فَإِن تَنَازَعَتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ, if you have a conflict among yourself, then فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then you go back to Allah and His Messenger. Bottom line is, we are worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even the ta'a in this case, the obedience in this case, is because of obedience of Allah and His Messenger, because they are the one who commanded us to obey the rulers who are over you, who are implementing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, he made sure the people understood that they can account the ruler, in this case Uthman himself. He is accountable. So that he said that if you find in the book of Allah that you should put my legs in irons, then put my legs in irons. This is what Uthman said about that. So do not be the one who is following blindly to the extent if somebody is asking you to do haram, you're falling for haram also. No. So whether even to that extent, even the one who has the highest power in Islam he cannot be obeyed in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to understand about that also. So sometimes we think of, we get to the point where people start following scholars blindly also, to the point whatever they say, they start following them. And this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemned this idea to the extent that it is referred as you are making them as your Rabb, as your Lord. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the previous nations like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّخُذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرُهْبَانَهُمْ أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ, that they took, the Christians and the Jews, they took them, their rabbis and their monks, as their lords, as their Rabb. And Ali bin Hatim radiallahu anhu, who was a Christian at that time, when these ayat were recited in front of him, he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we did not make them as our lords. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, did you accept whatever they made it halal as halal, whatever they made it as haram? He said yes. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that's what it means by making them as your lords, as your Rabb. And this is a reminder for the Muslims that we should not be doing the very same things that the previous nations have done. And that's the purpose of telling us those stories from the previous nations, so we learn the lesson and we don't repeat the same mistakes. So Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, he made sure that people get this idea as well, that make sure that he is accountable, and if he's making mistakes, he should be reminded of the mistakes that he made. And the example of that is when some group criticized some of Uthman bin Affan's mistakes, radiallahu anh. And they claim that in the way he ran the affairs of the governments and the appointment of people to positions of authority, and groups assembled to bring him to account for his actions. Okay, so they claim that he was doing that. So he gathered the people. Okay, that's fine. Then he did not say to those people that what you're doing is wrong, that you are holding me accountable for my mistakes. Rather, he wanted to clarify that whether they were mistakes or this is an incorrect perception from their end. Okay, so that shows that Uthman bin Affan was clear that people can hold him accountable for the mistakes, and that's a very well-known thing among the Muslims, that we can hold them accountable. Okay, like we talked about that when we talk about the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, that once he got up and he was giving the khutbah, and he had some new clothes on, and that clothes was from the cloth that was distributed among the Muslims. And one of the person got up and he said, Ya Umar, you cannot give the khutbah unless you tell us, where did you get this material from? Because the amount of material, the cloth that was given to everybody, that would have not been sufficient for Umar's the size. He was a very tall man. So that was not sufficient for him to get that big of a dress or clothing that he was wearing from the material that was given to everybody's share. Now, so Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he said, my son will give the answer. And he asked him to get up and give the answer. And he said that because his father's size, he gave his share to his father as well. And he was able to make that the clothes that he was wearing. Meaning, the point is this, they were to that extent keen about that they would not slip. So people were holding them accountable. And same thing we see in the time of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh. And our history of Islam, when Islam was implemented, we can find many, many incidents. Even in the times when the Muslims were weak, you will be finding these kind of incidents were happening, similar to that, if not of the same extent. Now, second aspect in this ruling was the Shura. Shura was another key role that's been played in the ruling throughout the Islamic rulings. And Shura means consultation, advice that you see. And this, you can see that even in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to consult from the Muhajirin, from the Ansar, and even among the individual Sahaba, he would go to specific ones who were more knowledgeable, or the one who were aware of the situation better than the others. That included people like Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, people like Umar, people like Ali, people like Salman al-Farisi and Hudayfa al-Yaman radiallahu anhum ajma'in. That Rasulullah used to consult them. And But there's one aspect of shura and advice consultation we should understand what it means by that. That shura, does that mean shura can be done among the people to outlaw something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a law about? Meaning to say something, for example, drinking is haram in Islam. So we cannot do the shura and get together and say, well, too many people are drinking, hence let it go, let it slide. Or it's generating revenue for the state, so that's okay for drinking to be allowed. Shura cannot do that. Shura's job is about giving the consultation or advice within the things which are halal in Islam, which are permissible either way. So when they give their advice, it is between the two halals that they're giving the advice, which one we should go with. It's not, if there is no choice, Islam has given something which is obligatory to be done, it has to be done. And if something is prohibited by Islam, then the shura cannot come in and make something legal. That's the very clear aspect of it. Also, shura's job is not to make laws. Sometimes people think of a shura is like a parliament and Congress today or Senate. No, shura is not like that. Shura was something about that is mubah, permissible in Islam, to choose between the two permissible things. And Khalifa is reaching out to them to understand what is something that people want, for example, between those permissible things. Not to come and make laws intact or something, and hence we think of it, shura and democracy is same thing. That's not the case. These are two different things. In Islam, the hukm belongs to Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the one who provides us the ruling to what is halal, what is haram. So that when we talk about shura and we talk about that khulafa like Abu Bakr and Umar also after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Uthman bin Affan continue to have consultation, continue to have shura, that's because that's part of Islam. But has to understand this is within the framework of the Sharia. We cannot just take one word out of context and start applying it everywhere else. Okay, so and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran about the shura, like for example, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَإِذَا عَذَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that go and do advise, a consultation among them about something. So consult them in the affairs. Then when you have taken a decision, then go ahead and do it. Okay, now we have to know the context of these ayat, when they were revealed and what was the purpose of it. So as I said, it was not to come up with new rules or something. It was about the two permissible. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Shura, there's a shura name after this. It says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And their matter is in consultation between them. So do consultation, but consultation has a place. Like there's an example in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Battle of Badr was about to happen, Rasulullah sallallahu camped the army in one location. One of the Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his name was Hubbab bin Mundir radiallahu anh. He came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he questioned him like this: is this the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are stationed here? Or this is just a war strategy? When we say war strategy, this is something mubah. He knew that it was already mubah, but within the mubah, if Allah is commanded to do this, then that becomes, we have to follow. So he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah said, no, this is a war strategy. Then Hubbab said, okay, then where we are camped, this is not the right good location. Let's go and gather the water from the well and close the access to the enemies and go to a higher place. So you are at a higher location and the enemy will be a lower location, and then it becomes easier for us to fight. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam accepted his advice. That's what it means by consultation. That's what I mean by advice. Advice is not regarding that you are making laws or coming up with the halal and haram and making halal haram and haram and halal. That's not what means by shura. So when we talk about shura, we understand. Now, let's be clear about what is the difference between the shura and so one thing we understand the shura, other thing was accountability. Shura is, when do we need shura? Before you do an action, you seek shura, you consultation. You consult before the action. Accountability is about what? Something wrong is done, and you're doing the you're doing the accountability of the person who has done something wrong. So shura was in the time of Uthman, Abu Bakr, and Umar, all of them, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also. And we see that the accountability of Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman is also done. But when they talk about accountability, accountability is about the actions already done. And now you are questioning whether this action was done is right or wrong. Shura is prior to action is done. You are seeking the advice of the people whether what should be done. So I think that should be clear now. Okay, now another aspect of the ruling is, which is a cornerstone of a ruling in Islam, which is the justice. Because this, now when we say justice or even equality, let's not be or we will use the word freedom in some sense. So it's not, we are trying to say, oh, Islam is no different than when people talk about justice, equality, and freedom of speech and all those things. No, this is not what we're talking about. So when we say justice, justice comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it means by justice. Justice comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. He is the one who is aware of everything. He is the one who knows inside out of all the human beings, Muslims, non-Muslims, or animals, or whatsoever is out there. He is the one who is all-knowing. And Allah commanded us. So when we follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the result will by default be justice, because it's from the just, al-adil, Allah azza wa jal. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, commands us, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qisti shuhada lillahi walau ala anfusikum awil walidain wal aqrabin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh, you who believe, stand out firmly for justice as the witness to Allah, even though it is against yourselves, your parents, and your beloved ones, your kins around you. Okay, and then similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkurun. Verily, Allah enjoins al ihsan and the justice to give to help to your kins and the kids, and forbid the al fahsha and munkar. Fahsha means indecent acts, whether it is about indecency in your actions, or it could be even fahsha is used for some time for going against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Now Allah azza wa jalla also holds us accountable for being the one who provides the justice to the mankind. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Thus we have made you, the Muslim Ummah, you are the best people Allah has created, the just people, the one who provides justice to the mankind. And you are witnesses over people, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was witness over you. So now, that is our job, so we can convey the message to the people. So when we are seeing injustices are happening to the Muslims or non-Muslims alike, we are the one who have the message of the haqq that needs to be carried out to the people. And that is an obligation on the Muslims. Now there will be no more new messengers. Now the work of the messenger must be carried on by the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, we are not getting new wahi or anything. We have already received the wahi that was received from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have received it through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now our job is to carry this message to the rest of the mankind. Okay. Now when it comes to Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anh, we see it very clearly in his implementation of the deen that justice was something that was of most sublime form that you see in him. In his time, he appointed one of the governors who was his step brother. His name was Walid bin Uqba. Okay, radiallahu anhu. Now Walid bin Uqba, who was the son of Uqba bin Mu'ayth, and this is interesting, I mentioned that many times, there were many of those people who were referred as the Adu Allah Rasul, the enemies of Allah and the messenger. You find that their sons became one of the leaders of Islam. They accepted Islam. And Al-Walid ibn Uqba, he was a son of Uqba bin Mu'ayth. Similarly, Uthman bin Affan was the stepson of Uqba bin Mu'ayth. Okay, Uqba bin Mu'ayth was one of the big enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now his son, so he appointed his stepbrother, as the governor of Kufa. Now, Al-Walid bin Uqba, as one of the reports talk about, that there was issue of drinking with him. Okay, so alcohol. When he found out, and there was witnesses were there who to testify, so he dismissed him. He did not think of, oh, he's my brother-in-law, my half-brother, or this or that, or step-brother. So let give him the, let him get by. No, he did not. And he dismissed him from his post. And then he wanted to have Abu Musa al-Ashari in his, instead he had it. Because when he tried to put Sa'id ibn al-As, the people did not like him. Okay? So he put Abu Musa al-Ashari over there as the governor of the Kufa. So that's the idea. When we talk about the justice, it's not like many places nowadays, even in the Muslim lands, we see that if you belong to a certain family, then you can get away or get by with anything that you want. As a matter of fact, you can be the most corrupt person in the country. As long as you belong to a certain family, you can get by. So what we see Islam does to the people is completely other way around. What it teaches us, like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, when one of the women from Banu Makhzum, a Makhzumiyya woman, she was brought because she stole, and Rasulullah commanded that her hand to be cut, as the Islam teaches. And then Usama bin Zayd radiallahu an, son of Zayd bin al-Haritha, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he was saying he is the beloved one of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So talk him out of this punishment. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that even if it was my daughter Fatima, I would have put this had. And he said the previous nations were destroyed when somebody who was from the elite, from the rich ones, from the powerful ones, if they committed a sin, they let him go. But if a weak one did it, then they applied the punishment. And that causes the destructions of the nations. And we can see to nowadays what is happening around the world, in the Muslim lands or other places. Okay, now in the Muslim, when Islam ruled, whether in the time of Rasulullah or Khulafa Rashidin and later on, people who were not Muslims, they had the freedom to practice their religion. Islam allows them, protect them. They can, in their private lives, they can follow their religion, and Islam consider them as Ahlul Dhimma. They are the one who are under the protection of the state. Now, this this thing existed in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Khulafa Rashidin, and throughout the history of Islam. And hence, we have this idea of this kind of a freedom, of course, but I'm not trying to discuss this from the angle of, oh, so we have the same concept of freedom. We're talking about what Islam teaches us, okay? So we don't try to change the Islam so it can fit in according to the minds of the people or something. It should be conveyed to the people as is, as it was given to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We should be the carriers of the very same message as is. That's what the messenger does. Messenger's job is to convey the message. Messenger's job is not to distort the message. Messenger's job is not to come up with a new message and give it to the people. Then he's not doing the job of a messenger. You're no more a messenger if you're not carrying the message that was supposed to be carried. I mean, nowadays, I give this example all the time. If an Amazon guy comes, if you have asked for something and he's supposed to deliver your goods, and he says, you know what? Oh, this brother Abdullah, he asked for, let's say he ordered tires for his car. But you know what? I don't think these tires are good for his car, so let me change it. Or let me give him a little bit cheaper ones. I'll give it to him, and I'll keep the old, because they may not be good for his car. He doesn't know. I know better than that. Well, what is he ordered has to be delivered. Okay, so when Allah has ordered us to deliver the message, so we better not be the one who think that we know better than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're going to change the message. Okay, so messenger's job is to convey the message and not to distort, not to sugarcoat, not to do anything, but convey the message as it's supposed to be conveyed. Okay, now similarly, inshallah, I'll try to wrap it up. We find in the time of Uthman bin Affan that in his time there was a thing which is called Hisba, and Hisba which is the inspection of marketplaces and all, and what other things which are happening. You can see that in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu and Sahaba, Khulafa Rashidin, including Uthman bin Affan. And there are some of the examples we can see in his time. For example, when he saw people were wearing clothes which are made up of safflower, which is the yellowish color clothing that you find some of the priests and the stuff, they wear them. In Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu did not like that the color, and he made sure that the people should not be wearing these kind of clothes. Or when he saw people are engaged too much into playing with the dice, and they're not fulfilling their obligations and these kind of things, so he made sure that people do not waste their time in these kind of things. And in his time, he also he prevented the women who are in the iddah. Iddah is a term which is used for a woman who has lost her husband, died or passed away. She's a widow, so there's a time of waiting period is called iddah. And or she's been divorced. During that time, he prevented them to go for umrah or hajj as well during that time. Okay. And then this is his some of his rulings and inspection that he saw that this was important for them. One of the incidents that he found that one of the guy, he came into the masjid, and he bumped into him, and he saw that he had some weapon on him, and he wanted to kill Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu anhu. And Uthman asked him, and he mentioned about that Uthman was unjust, and he was going to kill. And Uthman to talk to him, and then later on to prevent this kind of evil, even though he was going to attack the Amir al-Mu'mineen at that time. Only thing he did, he was very calm about that. So he made sure that this kind of stuff does not happen again. So he said, you should be out of the Medina. So he made him leave Medina safely, but he asked for somebody to give a guarantee for him that he will not enter back in Medina. So he was, in that sense, he was very halim, he was very forbearing, if you want to call him. And Uthman's life, inshallah, we'll talk a little bit more about that again, that he was one of those people who was courageous in the sense of even when his life was at the stake, in the end of his lifetime, when his house was seized, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him ahead of time not to shed the blood, and he made sure that the other Muslims' blood is also not shed to protect him, and he sent them back because he was following what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded him, and this is how he was, and he has love for the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a lot, that when he found somebody, he was showing some disrespect to Abbas radiallahu anhu, and he had him beaten up because he was disrespecting the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which shows that unfortunately there's a lot of messed up riwayat or reports are there. People have mentioned them. Of course, these are false. Falsified things about Uthman bin Affan, things like as if he has something against Ali radiallahu anhu or the family of Ali or the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is not the case. As a matter of fact, you find many cases where he showed his love towards the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, including Abbas, Ali, and all of them. So inshallah, we'll stop our talk here today, and if there is any question about the subject that is covered about the ruling style of